Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Source Material Live. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And we are kicking off Pacific Rim Week here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. And of course, first up is a comic book related to that property, specifically the June 2013 prequel graphic novel, one-shot deal here called Pacific Rim Tales from Year Zero. And here to help me out in talking about it is Pacific Rim enthusiast and superfan, Chris Sheehan. How do you do, sir?
Oh, man, I love surfing a lot. This is a surfing book, right?
Uh-huh. It's full of
cool.
references to the Beach Boys, and I wish my wife were here right now, because she actually could do this bit with you a lot better than I can, because she's actually into surfing and knows surfing.
Oh, I'm not, so...
Oh, okay. Good.
I may be a dynamic dude, but I've never been on a surfboard. No, I honestly didn't realize that this was... folks by now hopefully know that I am, sequestered away in a bunker in the desert, and I don't know anything about anything pop culture related that isn't comics, so I didn't know what the hell this was. I didn't know this was a movie. I didn't know this was a TV show. I didn't know anything. So, this was an experience.
Yes, you mentioned the TV show, and about a week or so back, Netflix dropped the first 7 episodes of the Pacific Rim anime, Pacific Rim: The Black, and that's why we're dedicating a week to talking about this. So, back on my podcast, we actually reviewed, like, way back in 2013, we did a review for Pacific Rim, and then when Pacific Rim Uprising came out, we reviewed that as well. And someday, those will be rescued from the ether and put up on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network's current feed through W2M. But in the meantime, tomorrow night we're actually going to talk about The Black, and then we'll revisit those movies as A Long Road to Ruin. In the meantime, we are talking about Pacific Rim Tales from Year Zero tonight, which was, as I said, a trade paperback that was actually supervised by Guillermo del Toro, who directed Pacific Rim. So let's talk a little bit, though, because I know you said you haven't seen Pacific Rim, you haven't seen Pacific Rim Uprising, you had no idea what the hell I was talking about. I was like, hey, I want you to talk about this book, and it could have been called Ham and Cheese, and you were like, whatever, buddy.
Yep, basically. Yeah, Rough and Ready show, okay.
I'm here for you. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm there. Is basically what you said. But before you decided to swear off television like a monk, were you into any kind of mechs and monster type things?
Well, it's funny you asked that, because as I was reading this, I was getting distinct pangs, and I didn't realize there was an anime out for this. This was actually a little reminiscent of a fairly popular turn-of-the-century, late 90s anime called Neon Genesis Evangelion. Are you familiar with that property?
I know Aeon Flux.
Okay, that's not it.
I know Robotech. I know Voltron.
And Gundam and
yes.
Sasaraki. But Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's one of those things that if you're an edgy teenager, you love it. And when I discovered it, I was an edgy teenager, so I loved it. And it's got a lot of religious overtones to it, which are not present in this, thankfully. But the monsters that are coming, the kaiju in Pacific Rim here, are kind of reminiscent of the threat in Evangelion, which was the angels. And they needed to fight these angels, which were, basically giant kaiju monsters. And to do so, they had to put together mechs. And the mechs had to be piloted by characters, children, who were able to synchronize with these robots. They weren't just controlling them with their mind. They were actually, piloting the Avas. But as I was reading through this prequel here, I was like, wow, that seems kind of Ava-ish. That seems very much like Evangelion. And then you just said that there was an anime. I'm like, holy cow, that's like full circle here. So I do have some familiarity and enthusiasm about giant robots punching monsters and stuff like that. I've been there, done that. And this, for not knowing what this was, I didn't hate it. I couldn't get mad at it. It was good.
Yeah, it loses something, I think, if you haven't seen the movie. This is definitely for people who are fans of the movie and like,
Absolutely.
I want more of this. So I'm going to read the synopsis here, and then we'll just talk about it. Don't miss this exciting sci-fi prequel graphic novel of the highly anticipated motion picture Warner Brothers and legendary Pacific Rim, directed by Guillermo del Toro. Wait, stop right there. What I really like about this? I love the idea, and they're doing this right now with the Godzilla vs. Kong movie that's coming out on Wednesday. So it's actually funny we're doing this. That Legendary, when they release a big movie, then releases books to go along with it. So they've actually, as of tomorrow, when we're recording this, are releasing Godzilla vs. Kong books to coincide with the movie. And they had previously released books to coincide with Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Godzilla. So this is a thing that Legendary likes to do. So it's kind of fun that we're doing this. Mm-hmm. They apparently released this around the same time to promote the movie Pacific Rim back in 2013. So that's pretty cool. That harkens back to the old days, right? You ever watch the documentary The Toys That Made Us? Like, well, we got these Transformer toys that we stole from Japan that we need to sell. Great. Let's contact Marvel and have them write a comic book. And from that comic book, we'll make a cartoon. And that cartoon will be a 30-minute commercial for the toys that we want to sell. How's that sound? Yep. That sounds great, Ronald Reagan. So, chronicling the very first time Earth is menaced by incredible monsters known as kaiju, these inhuman beasts rise from the ocean depths and threaten to extinguish all mankind. Witness the race to develop massive robot fighting machines called Jaegers, each one controlled simultaneously by two pilots whose minds are locked in a neural bridge. This action-packed tale features many of the key characters from the film as we follow them in their early careers. Written by Pacific Rim screenwriter himself, Travis Beacham, and with Del Toro's hands-on supervision, this volume is beautifully illustrated by Sean Chen, Ivel Gucciet, Chris Batista, and Pericles Jr. Inks by Matt Banning, Steve Bird, and Mark McKenna, and fully painted cover by superstar artist Alex Ross. You know Alex Ross, right?
I've heard of him.
Okay. So, Chris and I were talking before the show, and just to give a quick 30-second synopsis of what happens in the movie, where this book is situated. This book is situated at the time they have decided to defund the Jaeger program. But then the book, the structure of the book, the point of view is that there's a reporter who believes that that they're making the wrong move here in defunding the Jaeger program to build the coastal wall. And so she's gone to interview Idris Elba's character, Pentecost, and try to write and her aim is to write a piece that's sympathetic to the Jaeger program because she wants to see it continue. And in hearing stories from Pentecost and some other people working on the base, we hear about the first basically 5 minutes of the Pacific Rim movie that explains, when the kaijus attacked the first city, how often they were attacking, why they decided to build the Jaegers, why they needed two pilots, and the drifting and the neural handshake and all of that. All that stuff that's covered in the first 5 minutes of the movie is what this book is about, basically. And you get it from a couple of different perspectives. So, just going right into it, we meet a reporter. She's hanging around the base, and she sees a Jaeger in the midst of reconstruction. It's like it's missing an arm and shit. And she's looking for Pentecost, but he's away. He's been sent to Hawaii, and so she ends up talking with Tendo Choi, who works there at the base. And he tells her the story of the early days of K-Day, August 10th, 2013, San Francisco, California, the first day the kaiju attack. And it's a very personal part of the story because he talks about how he was working on a ferry at the time, and he left the ferry to go find his dad. And so,
in Chinatown.
Yeah, in Chinatown. And so we see the kaiju wrecking San Francisco, and him running after his father. And he talks about, and we'll stop and talk about this for a little bit, but he starts talking about how the kaiju attack was attacking the people of San Francisco on that particular day and what all had happened. He gets to his father, The army comes in, and after I think they said 6 days, they finally take the kaiju down. But his father ends up dying anyway because, as they'll discover shortly thereafter, kaiju blood is toxic, and he ends up dying because of it. Let me stop there. What did you think of this first part of the book?
I thought it was pretty good. It didn't. I mean, this is. I mean, they're not reinventing the wheel here. This is basically every giant monster story, just with a more personal twist on it. Which, again, not reinventing the wheel here. You know, we have a son who is a little distant from a parent, but realizes when the chips are down and when the lives are on the line, what's really important, and decides to, leave his own safety here because he was, what's his face, Choi, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on the boat to leave. He was on the boat to go back to the mainland or whatever. He was going to be safe, but he jumps off to go save, what was his name, Yavi? I don't remember his name, but the father. And, I mean, not anything we haven't seen before, but well done enough, I suppose.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this one, there's actually a couple of different Pacific Rim graphic novels and limited series and whatnot, but I specifically chose this one because as a fan of the movie, and I actually just rewatched it recently, the movie takes place several years after all this had already begun. Mm-hmm. They talk. Charlie Hunnam narrates the beginning of it, and it talks about this, and it talks about the development of the Jaegers. It talks about the need for 2 pilots and the drifting, and drifting is a lot of what the movie is about and what it means. And the movie is sort of a metaphor for trauma. So it's not just mechs versus monsters. There's a story about trauma being told, which as an aside, I watched this with my kids, and my son was like, "Yeah, less talky, more fighty." But Del Toro went out of his way to make a movie for adults. Go figure. And it had to be about something other than punching monsters. In any case, Charlie Hunnam in the beginning of the movie talks about when the movie picks up, that he explains that because the kaiju coming through the breach were getting more powerful and there was more of them, they were losing Jaegers faster than they can build them, and it was no longer a cost-effective measure of safety to continue to make Jaegers, so they came up with the wall idea instead. Mm-hmm. And so you're seeing the movie, what I was getting to is you're seeing the movie from that point on. So there's this whole, X amount of year period where kaiju are attacking and they have nothing to fight back with other than, usual military weapons, jets and missiles and whatnot. And then there's the period where they fought back, where they have the Jaegers, they fight back and they're winning. Like I said, it's like the first 2 to 5 minutes of Pacific Rim. You get an idea of what's happening, but you're not living in that world. So that was a long way to get to. I like the fact that this book, you are getting to see the world on the ground floor of that first 5 minutes of the movie, and it gets a little bit more explored.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned how this is about trauma, which is another link to Evangelion, which is chock full of trauma here. And I don't know if you're sitting in front of a Google browser right now, but if you type in Pacific Rim and space and then the letter E, does it autofill something for you?
Let's see. Let's do a Pacific Rim E. Yeah, the second one is Evangelion.
Yep, there you go. I guess I'm not the only one who saw that.
I like the thing I like about this book. My long rambling way to get there was I like that it takes place in this world that wasn't really explored in the movie. That's my point. So we meet Raleigh and his brother Yancey in the movie, and what we see in the movie is that Yancey is killed during fighting one of the kaiju, which causes Raleigh to leave the program and go help build the wall. And where the movie picks up, he's being re-recruited back to the Jaeger program for this last-ditch effort. The book here, we see them as kids, and they're watching the kaiju attack on TV, which I would expect that wouldn't mean anything to you, but if you've seen the movie and you're like, oh, Charlie Hunnam's character, cool. That's really what's going on here.
I don't know what a Charlie Hunnam is.
You don't know who Charlie Hunnam is?
I haven't the foggiest idea. He could knock on my door with a pizza right now. I wouldn't know who he was.
Oh, let's play a game. Let's see what. here's stuff he's been in. Let's see if you've seen any of them. Okay, we're gonna start. We're gonna start with the last thing he did, which was amazing, and you absolutely should see it if you haven't. The Gentleman.
Nope.
Okay. Papillion.
Nope.
King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Okay. The Lost City of Z.
Oh God, no.
Crimson Peak.
Nope.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Frankie Go Boom.
I'd remember that. No. I never saw that.
Green Street.
Nope.
Children of Men.
Nope.
Nicholas Nickleby.
Okay.
Whatever happened to Harold Smith?
I don't know. What happened to him?
How about Sons of Anarchy?
No.
You never watched Sons of Anarchy? Okay. Undeclared.
No.
Queer as Folk.
Nope.
Okay, you have no idea who this fella is. Got it. Terrific. Well, his character is the lead in Pacific Rim, alongside Idris Elba. So it was fun to see him at the beginning of this.
I don't know what an Idris Elba is.
You don't know? Have you ever seen The Wire?
No.
God, all right. God damn it, Chris. Let's see here. Have you ever seen? Did you see Cats?
No.
You didn't, the butthole version of Cats? Didn't see that either?
No, I saw Cats at the Radio City Music Hall when I was a kid, but I didn't see any movie.
Not the live action movie? Okay. How about Avengers Infinity War?
Nope.
Thor Ragnarok?
Nope.
The Dark Tower?
Nope.
Star Trek Beyond?
No.
Finding Dory?
No.
The Jungle Book?
No.
The Zootopia?
Nope.
Avengers Age of Ultron?
Nope.
Thor the Dark World?
Any Marvel movie? No.
God damn it. Prometheus?
No.
Rock and Rolla?
No.
Are you sure you haven't seen The Wire?
I'm positive.
All right. So Idris Elba's in all of those things and The Wire. He plays Stringer.
Oh. Okay.
Very popular
Which character is he in this book?
He's Pentecost. Marshall
the guy
Stacker
at the end.
Pentecost. The black guy, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. We also meet another person who you've never seen before, who is Mako Mori. Now, in the movie, they actually show you the flashback where Stacker rescues her after her parents are killed in the kaiju attack on, I believe it was Tokyo, and so he adopts her at that point. They show you a little bit. Yeah. They show you a little bit of that in the book, and that comes, I believe, in the next bit here.
Yeah, or the third chapter, I believe.
Yeah. So this next part of the book, so we get a flash to Yancey and Raleigh. We meet a young Stacker Pentecost. He's talking to this African American gal who's about to get in a jet and fight a kaiju.
His sister, right?
I guess I couldn't pick up what their relationship was. So in the movie, they talked about how basically their military weapons were inoffensive because of the thick hide of the monsters, and that's it's stuff like this is the reason why they came up with the Jaegers, because conventional military weapons and missiles weren't working, and so they eventually drop a nuke on it. But if they do that too much, they're going to end up nuking the entire planet, and then everyone will be dead.
Sure.
And so they show you the attack on the kaiju, which is again is alluded to in the movie, but now you're seeing it in the comic for the first time. Any thoughts on this? The military attack on kaiju number 1.
Not really. I mean, it was a means to an end. It was to get us to where we needed to be. It was well done. But again, nothing new under the sun. It's this is. I don't want to say it's tropey. It's just been done.
So it says he and the monster died at once. That's what I remember about K-Day. And he talks about the kaiju blood being toxic. Mm-hmm. And so she wraps up the interview with him, and then she goes to interview somebody else. She's in Big Sur, California, November 15th, 2024. And she meets... who is this? No, I don't remember this guy being in the movie.
Okay.
This seems like it's something new.
What about the woman who comes into this? Is she part of the movie?
No, I think these are wholly invented for this book.
Gotcha.
So we have the scientist who watched his kid playing with a monster toy and a robot toy. And
Fighting
he's
a
like,
robot. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, you know what? That's what we need to do. So he actually envisions the Jaeger program, but he doesn't know how to make it work, and so he recruits a former girlfriend of his who's a scientist, and they pitch the Jaeger program together.
Yeah, it's his mistress, I believe, and I guess when he left her or whatever, she turned to antidepressants and whatnot, and kind of went into her shell, and a lot of damage, a lot of emotional damage in this woman who kind of comes out of it as we work our way through this chapter.
Yeah, that's a good pickup because I had forgotten about that. But yeah, he cheated on his wife with her, and
yeah, well, while she was pregnant.
Right, and I think he went back. He went back to his wife when she had the baby, and he talks about it doesn't matter. It only, the marriage only lasted a year after that anyway. It's kind of sad. But yeah, you're right. She's kind of mousy in the beginning of this.
Yeah.
And so the next part of this book walks you through the early stages of the developing Jaeger program.
The whole pitch and everything.
We see a bit where they've made an arm, and they're going to, so this is part of the book called Turn of the Tide. And Pentecost has come to visit them because he's like an attaché or a liaison for the military. Yeah. And he's like, all right, you got to show me something. It's like if you need more funding, you got to show me that you're actually accomplishing something.
Yeah, I got to go back to them with something.
Right. So he ends up testing the neural link to where, because they don't have a test pilot, they don't have a guinea pig or anything like that. And so he's like, well, it's either I try this and it works, or you guys are fucked and we don't do anything. So he puts it on, and he's actually able to, using his mind, and that's the point of this, using his mind, he's able to control the big mechanical hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so it works, and they get funding. And so we fast forward to December 1st, 2014, and they are a couple again, these two scientists. Which is a big deal, good for what's going to happen next.
Yeah, because he grows very cold, and they've got a crew of guys who are going to be test piloting these things for the whole beta effort, and the woman is starting to have pangs of worry, are we really going to risk these people? But we also see that she's becoming kind of chummy with was it D'Agostino or
she's
becoming chummy. D'Onofrio, yeah. She's becoming chummy with him and feels guilty about it, says she's with someone, because I guess he was having trouble linking because of his adoration of her, or just being moderately turned on, I guess. But
yeah, it was very funny. Kind of reminded me of another movie you didn't see, Chaos Walking.
Never even heard of it.
Chaos Walking is a movie based on a YA series where the big hook is men's thoughts are projected outward. So... if you're thinking, I gotta poop, a puff of smoke will appear around your head that announces you have to poop.
Nice.
And so it's kind of like here where she's experimenting on him and trying to figure out the whole neural link stuff, and he has a back of the mind unvoiced thought of, you're pretty. Mm-hmm. And she's like, and because of the mechanics of what they're doing, she hears his thought. And she's like, oh! And he's like, what the hell, man? I didn't say anything. Why am I in trouble?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting thing. It's actually why it reminded me of the Chaos Walking thing, because it's like the Dave Chappelle bit about people say I wish people would just say what's on their mind. You don't want to hear what's on everyone's mind all the time.
That's true.
Society would never be able to function.
No, absolutely not. But they become kind of tight. And the fella is he's willing to risk was it D'Onofrio's life here in the beta testing here, where she is having just these pangs of worry, are we sure we want to put guys through this? Are we sure that we're ready? And he's like, well, we have to be ready.
Right.
And she is really against it. She wants the delay, but whether he is just trying to be in the good graces of whoever's funding them, or has some sort of a idea that she is thinking about this other dude. Whatever the case, he's cool pushing forward no matter what, and
so in the
it
movie,
almost cost the guy.
Well, in the first one, they do kill.
In the movie? Yes.
Captain Adam Casey is the first casualty. They couldn't tell if it was the seizure or the 200-foot fall that killed him.
The 200-foot drop, yeah.
In the movie, it's like a black and white photo of a guy who looks like he's seizing, and his nose is bleeding. And all Charlie Hunnam said was, it was too much for one brain, and it didn't go well. That's what we learned. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, they have this sexy time in the shower in the bedroom, where they have, which is the best place to have an argument. And she's like, let's not, I don't want to kill D'Onofrio. And he's like, fuck him.
Yeah. He signed up for it.
Like, there are monsters coming through a hole in the ocean. We have bigger fish to fry. So it's now February 18th, 2015, and they're doing another test, and there's D'Onofrio. And the same thing happens. It's too much for one guy. So she sees that he's having a seizure, at which point she decides, this is what they call drifting. She decides she's going to drift with him. So they'll have two brains piloting this machine. And they didn't know this was going to work. So basically, like, in the midst of trying to save him, she just acted. She had no idea if it was going to work. She had no idea what drifting would do. She just thought, well, maybe if I get in there and assist him, he won't die like the first one did.
Yeah.
So she puts it on, and they drift. And this is the first. So we are seeing, for fans of this series who have seen drifting a million times over 2 movies and an anime series, this is the very first drift that ever happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really done kind of artistically. It's sort of a white background.
Like astral planey.
Yeah, very. Mm-hmm. She kind of looks like a ghost. And then she has like like you use the term astral, like her astral form, and she's naked, by the way, because
of course
he's naked. It's like, he's like, how are you here? He's like, I bridged in with you. You were seizing. I'm sorry. I thought I could handle it. It's okay, Sergio. I'm here to help. It's too heavy, Doc. Not for both of us. And she extends her hand to him, and the demo, they learn with 2 brains this will work.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, more than a success, the brass immediately ordered construction of the first line of combat-ready Jaegers that are now they're all constructed to be 2-pilot Jaegers, and they perfect drifting. And I want to talk to you about that. I wanted to get your opinion on the whole concept of being inside another person's head, the whole concept of the drift. What'd you think about that?
I thought it was pretty cool. Because I liked the way that they used it. Moving forward here, where they were having like private moments off the grid, they were able to have discussions and talk about their real feelings with each other in a safer place, like a place where others can't hear it here, especially as they're starting to develop this relationship, and they both feel guilty about the other. I don't remember the other guy's name, the other guy, but I really like it as just a device to have them, because it works on so many different levels here, because you have them working together, so they're depending on one another, but they're also able to communicate with one another in the most intimate and private way possible. So it's it informs what's going to come, like in the next chapter here, where they kind of have to be on the same wavelength of literally and figuratively.
That is so much of the movie.
Okay,
is drift compatibility. Gotcha. They use phrases like "don't chase the rabbit," which is you're seeing somebody else's memory or one of your own memories, and you're focusing on that and not the task at hand.
Gotcha.
There's so much of both movies and the anime are spent with the pros and cons of drifting. Before we continue, I just want to take a moment and talk about one of our great sponsors here on the show, and that is Grammarly. For you listeners of the Source Material Live podcast and Radulich and Broadcasting Network on W2M, Grammarly is offering a free download of the Grammarly software. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free. So back to drifting. So we see them now. It's affecting them, that like they're in each other's. It's making them closer, which is another thing they talk about. Like Raleigh and his brother were quote unquote drift compatible because they were brothers, and so it's there's a lot of different combinations of people who are drift compatible, but it's all about being able to stay on the same wavelength, being able to share each other's memories, not get lost in the psychology of it all, and then punch a monster in the face.
There you go.
It's all pretty cool. So this part of the book talks about her, because of the drifting, being very close with D'Onofrio, and her basically like breaking up with the head scientist dude. All right. Anything else about this part of the book?
No, this was kind of a little bit of a lull. I thought it was well told, but it was. I mean, this is foundation. This is laying a foundation here. It's something you got to do, and I think they did it. They did it as well as they could have, given the medium they were using, and I really don't think I have any complaints.
So the prototype that they built, Brawler Yukon, they actually test in the field and they have it fight a kaiju and it wins. And so this is the thing that really activates the Jaeger program going forward. They're like, okay, we know it works. We defeated a kaiju. They start winning now. And so on the one hand, yay, they solved that problem, and they now have a weapon to fight these kaiju with. On the other hand, he lost somebody that he loved.
Yep.
So the next part of the book, she actually is able to meet with Pentecost. And so in this part of the book, she's interviewing him.
In Hawaii.
Yep. And in the movie, at the very end, he pilots a Jaeger. But the little bit of backstory we learn on him is that he started off a Jaeger pilot. And being a Jaeger pilot, especially in the early stages when these were basically giant walking nuclear reactors, everyone gets cancer. On the one side, they're able to save humanity. On the downside, cancer from nuclear radiation. So at the end, in the Pacific Rim movie, when we meet him, he was told basically no more Jaegers for you, and he is like actively fighting cancer. In the book, it's the early stages of it before any of that ever happens.
Yeah.
And that his co-pilot actually has cancer, and they talk about how basically being in the Jaeger gave her cancer. So that was an interesting take, Whenever we read these stories, you mentioned Gundam before and Voltron or whatever, nothing like that ever comes up. This is the first time that I've read a book that dealt with mechs and monsters where there were like, I don't know, real world consequences for what they're doing, and it's not just all like it's cool to watch mechs punch monsters.
Sure. Yeah, we're dealing with actual consequence, and that's a pretty cool way to ground this series into things that are relatable, and also amping up the heroic sacrifice. This isn't, because you said in the movie, I don't remember if this was on the air or off the air, but that the pilots of these Jaegers are like celebrities. They're like superstars and just pop culture, icons. And I mean, you can see that. You can certainly see that. Okay, wow, they're doing this, and they're famous, and they're rich, and they're great. But then, on the other side of the coin, it's like, but they're exposing themselves to something that is going to limit their abilities and is going to adversely affect their health ultimately. So there is a sacrifice to it. There is something that. I mean, it's hard. I'm trying to figure out how to say this here. It's a lot more altruistic than just going into a robot or using a robot to punch a monster, and I think that's a really cool way to frame it.
Yeah, I don't think Guillermo del Toro and the people who worked on Pacific Rim really get their due, because I think they start with a silly premise, mechs punching monsters, and they did a lot with it, and I don't think they get the credit for that. I mean, the movie did well, and it did well enough that it got a sequel, and the sequel was horrible. But but I think that first movie there, I mean, obviously it resonated with people. They wouldn't, or they wouldn't be books and cartoons about it.
Sure.
But I think it also gets largely written off by like the critical community for just being a silly monster movie when there's all this other grist for the mill that they explore, and they did it knowingly. Like, they had to know that we can't, this movie has to be about something. It has to be
more.
Right. Yeah. It has to be, regarding the nature of man, not just a series of action sequences.
Yeah.
So this next part of the book, we see Raleigh and his brother Yancey, who we'll meet at the beginning of the movie. This is them applying for the Jaeger program, getting into the Jaeger program, and then being trained to be pilots. And so, like I said, when we meet them in the movie, one's dead already, and then the other one's having real difficulties.
Okay.
And so it's fun to see it's fun to see Charlie Hunnam's character early on before any of that happens. That's part of the fun of this book. But they actually get into a fight later on because, again, you can hear other people's thoughts when you're drifting, and one of them hears the other one talk about like their girlfriend and how and they like wanted to sleep with her, and it's like, you motherfucker.
and it's actually the reporter who's doing the interviews throughout this book who is the girl who gets in between them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, good pickup.
Yeah, because Pentecost is like. He's like, hey, you caused problems. She's like, oh, I was just a teenager back then.
Right.
And then we go to a bar scene with the twins here, and the art is a little bit weird in this part of the book here. The twins look horrifying, but but then she comes in and she's like, oh, you guys are pilots, huh? And they're like, well, almost. And she's like, good enough for me. And like writes her number on one of their hands, and one of them says like, yeah, I don't care about her, and the other one's like, oh, I'm all about her, and then the other one bangs her or is fantasizing about banging her. It's interesting.
Yep, and then of course they're jealous, and it's like a lot of this other stuff that's between them bubbles up. Like, why do you have to have the thing that why do you always want the thing that I have, and stuff like that. Very brotherly type stuff.
Absolutely,
competitive brother stuff.
It definitely shows the negative ramifications of being too close to your sinking partner.
Yep. And when the ultimate objective is to be able to be on the same wavelength so that you can throw punches and fight monsters, that becomes very important. To be able to move beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So they nearly get themselves, because they're fighting about this, they nearly get themselves kicked out of the Jaeger program.
Do they? Because they get, they don't get killed in this, but I mean, they do get like a shard through the head of the robot here. Was that just a training sequence?
It was training, yes.
Okay, so yeah, they did lose a training sequence where had that been real.
Which is ironic, because that's actually an allusion to what happens in the movie.
Oh, okay.
That's how Yancey dies.
Gotcha.
They're fighting an actual Jaeger. And, they're like these kick-ass star pilots, and they think they're going to have no problem. And they go and they have this fight, and the Jaeger, they think they've actually taken the Jaeger down. And the Jaeger nips up, as they say, and then punches through the helmet area of the Jaeger and pulls Yancey out of it while he's drifting with Charlie Hunnam, and it messes Charlie Hunnam up real good. Like, Charlie Hunnam basically has to pilot the thing by himself, which he does, but then nearly dies in the process, and that's when he leaves the program.
Gotcha.
So that was a neat little detail that they put in the book here, that in this training sequence, you see exactly what's basically going to happen in real life to Yancey in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
All right, so they fight, and they Pentecost like get your shit together. Goes back to Pentecost's partner, who is being treated for cancer. She's lost all her hair and all of that, and they're talking with Mako as a child, who will be an adult by the time the movie rolls around. And then she dies. His partner does.
And that's why he's in Hawaii.
And then the book pretty much ends shortly thereafter. The implication from the book is that, because she's initially writing a story about what's going on with the Jaeger program, in the midst of it's defunding and production of the wall, and she's pretty much cheerleading this thing, saying
she's doing like a puff piece.
Yeah, and I think she's encouraged to basically write a thing about why we need the Jaeger program. And so the implication from the end of the book is that she is what gets the ball rolling to for Pentecost to get the Jaeger program up and running one last time. Like they know it's not going to go forever. They're not going to get funding forever. And I think like it's implied that her piece that she's going to write instead of the puff piece she's doing, she's going to write something else. And that piece is what's going to inspire Pentecost to get the Jaeger program up and running for one last ditch offensive against the Breach, which is the premise of the movie. So that's it. That's Tales from Year Zero. What did you think overall?
I didn't go into this with any expectation, but I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was half bad. I can't get mad at it at all. As I was starting this, I'm like, how am I going to fit a "When does Hawkman die" joke into this? But I didn't have to. I didn't have to because this was an enjoyable time here. I was actually expecting, from what little I knew of Pacific Rim after looking it up and Googling it, I thought this was going to be a lot of robots punching monsters or robots punching other robots. And I was pleased to see that was not the case. We actually got some very human stories here, and a world just trying to do the best it can to protect itself. I thought this was really well done.
Yeah, I agree. I like this world. I like living in this world for a little bit. And so I was happy to see a book that takes place in a part of the world that hadn't been explored. Because like I said, the sequel is years later after the kaiju after the portals closed and the kaiju have been defeated. And the cartoon takes place during that period as well.
Yeah.
So you never really get to live in the world between
before the shoe dropped. Yeah.
Right, before the shoe drops. And I like that world. I want to see more stories about what was going on in that time when the Jaegers were being developed and when they were winning. I think those would be fun stories.
Yeah, and they were. They were,
yeah. All right, so that's it. That's our coverage of Pacific Rim Tales from Year Zero. Tomorrow, David Wright and Robert Winfrey are going to join me for a TV party to discuss the anime Pacific Rim: The Black. Wednesday, myself and Jesse Starcher will review the new Tomahawk album. For those of you who worship at the Church of Mike Patton from Faith No More, that's one of his side projects. So that'll be, we've reviewed Tomahawk before, usually pretty good. And then on Thursday, myself, Sean Comer, and David Wright again will be revisiting both Pacific Rim movies, Pacific Rim and Pacific Rim Uprising. Last week, we did Avengers: Vision and the Scarlet Witch: A Year in the Life, Zack Snyder's Justice League, the new Rob Zombie album, WandaVision. We put on the last chapter of our boxing podcast, focusing on the Klitschko brothers. We reviewed Fastlane, and that's it. Oh, and in celebrating the debut of the Invincible show on Amazon Prime, Jesse dropped the syndicated source material for the first ever Invincible graphic novel. Go ahead and do your plugs there, Chris.
You could find me at chrisisoninfiniteearths.com, also chrisandreggie.podbean.com. Main focus right now is the X-Lapsed program, which is over 150 episodes at this point. Still visiting for the first time the current year X-Men stuff after a extended break from the franchise when I ran for the hills when I thought the books were terrible. But I'm back now. Also at the site, chrisisoninfiniteearths.com, you could find X-Lapsed Origins, where I'm taking a look at seminal moments from Marvel history that are still kind of relevant to the X-books today, starting with a focus on the old 1980s Captain Britain stories by Dave Thorpe, Alan Moore, and Alan Davis, which explore a lot of topics that are very, very relevant in the current year books here, such as Otherworld, Saturnine, Mad Jim Jaspers, and The Fury. Those are a series of articles. Don't know if they'll ever become audio. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I think my voice is around enough anyway, so it's fun to write again. So there's that. So Chris is on Infinite Earths, chrisandreggie.podbean.com, and on Twitter at Ace Comics.
So we were joking before about, because this is Pacific Rim, clearly it's about surfing. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Chris, I don't know if you know this or not, but I referenced the Beach Boys when we did that joke. Did you know that you can find all the Beach Boys albums to listen to on AmazonMusic.com?
Whoa. I did not know that.
Are you a fan of the Beach Boys? Do you like, Surfing USA and all that?
I think the closest I get to being a Beach Boys fan is I like Wilson Phillips.
Terrific.
And I liked it when Uncle Jesse played the drums on Kokomo.
There you go. So yeah, if you're interested in checking out some Beach Boys or Dick Dale, if you're into another surf music guy, or any kind of music that you might want to check out, use our link at getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork. That's getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork to get a free 30 days of Amazon Music, and you can stream all the albums you want. You can stream the Beach Boys, you can stream Barry Manilow, you can stream all of Chris Sheehan's favorites that are yacht rock bands. He likes the yacht rock that he does.
I love yacht rock, yes.
Well, there's plenty of yacht rock to be had on Amazon Music, so if you would like
Ride like the wind.
That's right. If you want a free 30 days to check out all the yacht rock you can shove into your ear holes, go ahead and use getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork today. All right. So next week we've got some Godzilla King Kong stuff doing. I mentioned before that Legendary likes to do these comic books to synergize with the movies, promote them, etc., etc. It's an age-old tactic in comic books, right? There's a movie, like all the Marvel movies had like prequel tie-ins.
Nobody read.
That nobody read. My kids thought I needed one of those. I have one for the Thor: The Dark World that I got for Christmas.
There you go.
Which I'm sure cost $1. So there's so comic books and movies and those that relate to each other as a marketing thing are not uncommon. And so Legendary is releasing a pair of Godzilla King Kong comics under the title GVK. First one is Kingdom Kong, and Chris and I are going to discuss it April 5th. That's going to be next week. And then I'm going to have Jesse come on and do the Godzilla one called Godzilla Dominion. And then I'm going to give Chris a break, and I'm going to have Alexis come on back on the show. We're going to do Resident Alien, Welcome to Earth. And then Chris will be back on the 19th to do Mortal Kombat X Volume 1 Blood Ties, which will be fun. And then to end the month of April, we're going to be doing another comic strip. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet because it's a surprise for Alexis. The book that we're doing, I'll tell you off air, but the book that we're doing, you can't find digitally anywhere. I had to buy 2 copies of the book, and I sent her one in the mail.
Oh, boy.
That's how committed I am to doing this project. All right. Chris did his plugs. Those are my plugs. Thanks for joining us here on Source Material Live, checking out Pacific Rim Tales from Year Zero. For Chris Sheehan, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.